Alrighty, hello folks, and good morning. So welcome to yet another discussion on Unicorn Overlord's difficulty here. So, okay, there were a lot of suggestions that I saw flying around for ways that TZ mode, could be, I guess, living up to its description a little bit more. Namely being a kind of unrelenting torment of non-stop agony kind of situation. And to that end, there were some that were way more interesting than others, and that's what I wanted to discuss today. Now, to my mind, I still think that the kind of classic answer is sort of the kind of easiest point from A to B here, which is just the classic Iron Man run. A lot of the challenges of TZ mode typically will become a bit more interesting when you're going and playing on a permadeath rule set. That effectively, if you, for example, end up taking a loss, that you just simply restart the thing from scratch. Now, that being said, though, there's a lot of more kind of direct, interesting options that I feel would have made for a fantastic second wave mode, so to speak. And again, bear in mind that a lot of these will have come from comments, and looking up those exact comments can be occasionally kind of difficult. So if y'all wouldn't mind mentioning if these were your idea or something like that. Most of them were from various videos, but let's go ahead and get started here. So first and foremost, there was one suggestion I saw that was particularly interesting, probably mechanically difficult to implement though. Which was essentially adding stamina costs to higher end abilities and things like that. So stuff like the White Hood and whatever else would allow you to potentially just kind of drain all stamina with a single attack, which thematically does make a lot of sense. That's a pretty neat way of handling it. I mean, realistically, it seems like stamina shuffling would then become the new thing, and it would be just as much as it was before, just a little bit more tedious, but that is a really cool thing thematically. Now, that being said, stamina shuffling actually having a cost would be, well, frankly, it would be very appropriate. I'm not really sure why they don't have a cost associated with stamina shuffling, other than probably not wanting multiple fights to bleed together and maybe causing some sort of glitch. That kind of stuff does obviously tend to happen in these kinds of situations. As far as adjusting direct difficulty, I don't think that would necessarily do that much to benefit the situation, because let's go ahead and get to one of the next suggestions that I saw that I would love to see as a toggle, but I would absolutely not want to see as the standard, which was to essentially give a free red and blue point to every unit on TZ difficulty. Now, on the low end, this seems like it would be the perfect answer, because we have a situation where they would effectively have sorry, nose acted up there. But effectively, they would have an advantage over you in all situations. That they would basically be able to potentially steamroll you if you were unprepared. Now, on paper, that seems awesome. Now, the downside of this is how quickly it can potentially steamroll into a situation where even if you are prepared, it might just go completely wrong. And to this end, I would like to cite my personal experience of going into Bastorias early whenever playing through the game on Expert, which basically is that exact scenario where they have 1 point over you. There's a lot of units that once they do have a single point advantage of any kind, will very quickly snowball. And basically everything in Bastorias is a huge example of this. If they ever get a numbers advantage, if they ever get a speed advantage, oftentimes they'll be able to take that to the bank. Now, again, obviously, I'm sure there's ways to work around it. I'm sure there will be fine-tuning and things like that. And personally, I think that mode would be very interesting. But again, it's a situation where oftentimes the kind of quote-unquote meta, so to speak, in that situation would be to use some sort of field effect to go damage a unit first. So, for example, whether you're using a mine or a treb, or not a treb, but a ballista or something like wild swing or whatever else, the general idea is that you end up chip damaging something just enough to be able to kind of send in a squad to actually go fight them. Just enough to be able to get one kill and then just kind of tip the team over from there. Which, again, don't get me wrong, is interesting. I just feel like that would get incredibly tedious incredibly fast. Another slight hiccup in that particular situation there is what happens when let's say they end up getting towards the end game there and they're capped out on points. Adding an extra point may not be a function that the system can currently do, probably on purpose, whereas at the same time, something like adding another point mid-battle or something like that might not necessarily do the trick either, unless they had some kind of unique AI-only ability in which they could potentially get those points at a cost of something else, you know? Which, like, mechanically speaking, that probably seems like something that could work, but honestly, I don't know. That seems like it would take way too much bug testing for a simple difficulty tweak. Now, okay, that being said, though, there were, again, a few other interesting suggestions that I saw thrown out there, one of which was just to adjust the loadouts of the different characters in the game. Now, okay, a lot of them are going to be spawning in pretty steadily, and a lot of them, like, if you just added one particular item to every spawn that came in, then potentially it would just create a new situation that now you have to make up for that one item, and that's the end of that. And it could be as simple as just literally give a, every empty slot unit a free lapis or something like that, which kinda, I feel like that would get silly pretty quick, but again, I don't know. But there is potentially a Felseal approach here. So for those that never played Felseal, basically it's like a sort of a FFT love letter that had a hell of a lot of customization options, including its difficulty, like up to and including telling that the AI is just not allowed to use certain mechanics and whatnot. And similarly had a very solid item system that the item limit on the hard modes in this one actually reminds me of a lot. Anyway, so one of the things that it had done is an option in the difficulty to essentially give random accessories with no limits to random units. And basically what this created was a situation that random units would just suddenly pull out some crazy crap that you never expected. Now, granted, in that case, it was a very, very modular system. Basically, everything could fit together. This one is fairly close. Obviously, there would be limits in terms of what classes could use what items or whatever else. But I feel like something like that would probably be the easiest point from A to B outside of an Iron Man mode. Wherein basically they just give them a random accessory. Just somebody shows up with a random carnelian or a random lapis or something like that. It would keep that that spice of life type of situation, but also would hopefully prevent the downsides of giving a universal bonus to absolutely everything. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. I don't, honestly, I don't know. But it would be really cool to suddenly see some random generic squad show up with a pursuance necklace or something like that. It's like, oh, hey, look, now they do this different mechanic on account of these item skills. It seems like it would be a way to let those item skills kind of still shine while maybe adding a new difficulty without tweaking anything with the numbers. Because that's the danger of tweaking anything with the numbers. It's already pretty freaking fine-tuned as it is. And when it comes to messing with around with a lot of these numbers, it could potentially fall completely out of whack if they just add new levels or add new stats or something like that. There's many games with difficulty sliders that allow you to do that exact thing, and it pretty much always ends up breaking stuff to the point where there's just a right answer all of a sudden, and that's always a problem. Now, that being said, I wanted to circle back to the whole Iron Man idea here, right? See, because that's a formula that's been a decent bit more tested. So to that end, I would actually like to shift over to another game here real quick to show you what I mean. Okay, so this gets me over to new XCOM, one of my favorite games here. And especially because of its kind of difficulty setup here. So it had a similar situation where players would start off for the first time. They found normal super easy. They found classic to be the sort of perfect difficulty, but then impossible. It ended up taking a bit too far in most people's eyes. That there's countless videos out there of people trying Iron Man Impossible runs and getting absolutely demolished, even with a ton of experience in the game. So, anyways, the thing is, I think this is a good kind of objective lesson over making sure that if there is a higher difficulty, that it doesn't simply just add additional stats. See, at a certain point, stuff is as hard as it needs to be direct combat-wise, but it's the other stuff that needs to be leaned into. So, for example, in this case, the actual health numbers weren't particularly high, so something as simple as adding 1 health made certain early game fights near impossible, and then basically changed nothing in the late game. And it would be the same thing for something like UO, as we talked about earlier. But many of those previous options that we talked about before could be implemented with something like this. However, for a true Iron Man run, I think what needs to potentially happen is actually something a bit crazier, right? So as far as a Iron Man version of Unicorn Overlord, I think it would work a little bit like this. That let's say we lean into those corn ashes a little bit, right? So right now, as it currently stands, the main difficulty that ends up coming out of this is the fact that when you have a squad wipe, all members of that squad have to be individually brought back in order to get those members back. That One of the things that got misunderstood is that you would only spend one corn ash and you just get the entire slot back. No, you have to buy them back individually, and in fact, if units are knocked out, you have to buy them from. You have to go and essentially buy them as soon as you get them. Um, so with that being said, essentially what we're going to do here is let's say we lean into that aspect a little bit more, where we have our. Is this going to be too loud? I haven't adjusted the audio too well here. Okay, I think I'm going to have to turn the voice volume down a little bit. Um, but let's say we say that you actually will lose your game if you end up seeing a game over screen. Like you just completely will take a loss right then and there, right? That your save file's deleted. That's the end of that. You can't save in the middle of the game and all that. But here's the other aspect to this. That you can still use those corn ashes to then go and turn that around like you could on expert to some degree. That you can use, for example, the ability to go and give yourself another shot on that particular map, not to redo the current turn. Literally, just have another shot in that particular map. You can reload one autosave in order to go give it another shot. Like, let's say it costs you something like 10 corn ashes or something, right? So what's interesting in this situation is that now you have a choice of do you bring your people back or do you actually spend those ashes in order to give yourself a chance to go mulligan a fight later because something went wrong. Now that being said, you might be saying, "Wait a minute, stupid! My big gamer brain just kicked in, and you can just go to the mining thing and go get infinite amounts of those." Okay, so instead of this, instead of going and being able to go and kind of get in there infinitely, let's say instead you can effectively either only use your tickets, which would be one way to go about it potentially, because it means that mining is always going to be a quest reward, so to speak. So you would have a limited amount of tickets, or optionally, we say double or triple the cost of actually going and mining. Now, that could still be potentially cheesable. I kind of like the free ticket idea, but hey, that's just an idea I'm throwing out there. So let's say one way or another, we have one of those around now, right? Now you might be saying, wait a minute, you can just go spend more money over at the. You can just go get more and more from the sigil, right? So let's just say that for those sigils, you now have to, let's say, spend shards in order to open them. Creating a situation where we now have a limited resource, like we've basically gone and taken the fact that you can go and infinitely cheese stuff from the church, made it so that they are truly a limited resource, like they say in the actual game itself. So we have that as one aspect of it, and additionally, we've gone and dealt with the money aspect, basically with money being unlimited, potentially causing somebody to have more of a choice when it came to the money itself, and additionally. We've dealt with the fact that somebody could potentially still make a overpowered team composition, which I still don't. The thing is, when it comes to the whole overpowered not overpowered thing, part of this discussion comes from the fact that they kind of leaned into two different franchises that were already established at the same time. So, for example, when it came to let's say like from the ogre battle side of things, players are generally more used to playing a bit scuffy. They're used to being able to interact with the world. They're used to being able to kind of adapt to or see the world adapt to the stuff that they do. So they're not exactly seeing it as like, oh, my team is super overpowered. It's just like, okay, they are overpowered in this situation right now. They are good in this situation. They're not necessarily like breaking anything because the direct fight isn't necessarily the important part. Um, that the fight is just basically set dressing more or less. Anyways, which is weird because it juxtaposes with the kind of Fire Emblem side of things, where generally they've kind of been conditioned to think more along the lines of like, oh, you got to take every fight absolutely perfectly, and if you don't reset to go get your perfect stuff on your highest difficulty, then you're just doing it wrong or whatever else. Like it's just interesting to see the situation where both are kind of preconditioned to expect completely different things. um, I don't think that there's much of a kind of a way to thread the line between them, so to speak. But anyways, let's go ahead and get back into it here. So let's say we take this whole Cornash economy, right? So now we're in a situation where it's like, okay, do you even want to go bring back your towned units? Because now you're potentially deleting your save file if you end up failing due to not having brought them back. You can't necessarily go and, let's say, set up a bunch of Alpha Strike builds or whatever else using church items. Can't necessarily get extras of those. Potentially, it's more difficult to get Oclese early on or something like that. I still prefer calling her Olchus. I don't know, it just sounds funnier to me. Um, but either way, it just leads to a case where everything is just kind of this compounding different difficulty, give or take. Now, obviously, this is not considering everything. I'm sure that there's definitely ways to cheese that too. But either way, I think it might be an interesting little shift up to the difficulty there, you know? So I'd be curious to see what folks think about this. Like, do you think it could actually function? Do you think it's something that would have to be, like, wow. Sorry, my nose just did some weird, funky nose stuff right there. But let's say you know, maybe mods would implement it down the line, which it's questionable how that would go right now. But anyway, it's kind of a whole other note. Anyways, I personally think it could be something neat, but I'd be curious to hear what y'all think. So that is pretty much about that. So yeah, what do you think? Think it could work? Think it could not work? Think we're overthinking this a little bit? Because there have been just as many folks that thought that it was too difficult that also thought it was too easy. So it's not necessarily that everybody's on the same page as far as the difficulty goes, but if you want to make an Ultramasochist mode, I feel like that would be the way to make it happen, you know? So that's my 2 cents on the matter. I'm just going to try to deal with this encounter real quick and kind of see how that ends up playing out. I have a feeling that this one might be just barely out of range to actually pull this off. For those that have never played this before, basically the kind of math of this is just like if this guy dies, this guy dies. Realistically, that one has to reposition, but that whole mental link between them ends after the end of this turn. Um, Actually, same thing with this situation over here, that effectively 3 are dead if one dies in that direction. But they also can't get over there to open that door, so they can't also throw this through there. Funnily enough, the Vita version has a funny glitch that you can throw through doors. Anyway, so yeah, that is about that. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Let me know if what you think about this corny method, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.